أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين بالقاسم محمد الله وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا اللهم صل. أما بعد فقد قال أمير المؤمنين علي بن أبي طالب عليه الصلاة والسلام أيها الناس إنا قد أصبحنا في دهر عنود وزمد شديد كنود يعد فيه المحسن مسيئا ويزداد الظالم فيه عتوا لا ننتفع بما علمنا ولا نسأل عما جهلنا ولا نتخوف قارعة حتى تحل بنا صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. Inshallah, starting khutbah number 32, part 1, lengthy khutbah in a sense that divided into 3 parts. Inshallah, we'll cover it in 3 sessions. First part, Imam highlights the changing values in his time. You and I can also, especially those who are born in the 50s and the 60s, they can understand the changes that happened in the 90s and the 2000s. Those who are born in the 70s and the 80s, they can relate to the changes that happened in the last decade or so, right? And even nowadays they call it the Gen Zs, can differentiate themselves from the Gen Y, and the Gen Alpha can differentiate themselves from the Gen Zs. All these different generations that have come about. So why are these distinctions? Primarily these distinctions are there, number one, as the times are changing, technology is advancing, many things that didn't exist in the past are now here. People of the past are trying to adapt to those things. But the people of this generation consider this to be very normal, routine for them, nothing that they really need to adapt because they were born into this era. So there are physical changes that come about, and then there is spiritual aspect of the values that change. You can relate to that as well. So, well, हमारे ज़माने में ऐसा नहीं होता था. In our time, this is not how the children would act in front of their parents, for example. In our time, the community would not do this, or friends would not do this, or in our time, there were different values, right? You can say that. Or the place that I come from, there are different values over there. So here Imam is referring toward the changing of values. Min khutbatin lahu, from his sermon, in which he describes his era full of injustice. Divides the people of that time into 5 different categories, and then expresses detachment from the world. In the very first portion of it, Imam says, Ayyuhan nas, O people, if you have been born in such a wrongful and thankless period, meaning we're going through this such a wrongful and thankless period wherein the virtuous is deemed vicious. Look at how the values have changed. That you used to consider to be righteous and virtuous, it's now looked at the opposite. That's something which is vicious. The oppressor goes on advancing in his excesses. You can relate that even today. We do not make use of what we know, and we do not consider what we do not know, or we do not discover what we do not know. We are jahil. We want to remain jahil of that which we are ignorant of. We do not fear calamity until what? Until it hits us, until it befalls us, right? Until we are facing it head on. So khutbah is divided into, or if you look at it at a glance, this sermon is composed of 4 sections. Today we'll discuss just the first section. It speaks about the painful and the tragic condition of society during the time, and the difficulties faced by the righteous and pure-hearted people. The other portions, of course, let me just go over this. Imam divides people of time, possibly the people of every era, not just his time. These categories exist in every era. But Imam, of course, having the insight, is highlighting that even at that time, when there are many corruptions have not been surfaced yet, yet these four categories of people still exist. What are they? Number one, a group that does not engage in corruption. They don't do any corruption. Just like today, many people don't engage in corruption. Simply because they don't have power. Because if they had power, they would do corruption as well. In reality, they are depressed because of lack of means. Be a group that possesses power and uses it to create corruption and attain worldly wealth and position. How many examples do you got? No need to name any names. See, a group that outwardly performs acts of worship and deeds for the hereafter. I think that's us, all of us. We all perform acts of worship and deeds, or at least me, I don't want to include you. But in truth seeks the world through these actions, not the hereafter. Why am I doing all these ibadat? I want some maqam here. I want people to look at me as zahid and muttaqi and parezgar and ascetic. Very little do I care what will happen in the hereafter with these accolades and the attributes. I want appreciation right here. And the last, Imam said in that group, that pretends to be ascetic, zahid and content, only because they have no access to power, while in reality they are neither ascetic nor content. This is similar to number A, but we will draw a distinction between the two, why Imam mentions it like this. So Imam describes the characteristics of each of these four groups, which exists, of course, in every society. Then there's a third section where Imam speaks of another group, mentioned separately, noble men of pure nature. You say, well, where is this missing? How come this was not included in those four groups of people? There must be someone good. So yeah, Imam kept them as a separate category. He says, pure men and women, of course, of pure nature, noble men and women of pure nature, who have attached their hearts to Allah and walk upon His path. Then Imam further divides them into several types and explains the characteristics of each type with precision and subtlety. And lastly, in the fourth section, the concluded part of the sermon, Imam calls people to detachment of the world. Now, after having mentioned all of these categories of people, then Imam, of course, wants to give them some anecdotes. He wants to give them some advice, and that is to do not attach yourself to this world and be indifferent toward worldly life, whose love is the source of all sins and miseries. You know, miftahu kulli shar is the key to all the evils. So, the first portion that we had talked about, just very quickly, not too long, we're living in a time when values have been overturned. What are these times? Right away from the very get-go, Imam addresses the general public. And he first speaks about the corruption and the deterioration of his era. So particularly his era. Now, it's difficult to say which era is this. It is definitely after the wafat of Rasulullah. Right? This is definitely after the wafat of Rasulullah. Now, there might be some elements of it in the time of Rasulullah, but this is definitely after the wafat of Rasulullah. He says, "Oh people, we are living in a hostile age and a time full of ingratitude." Very hostile. Hostility is all around. Grab and go, conquer, take over because you got power. You have power, but you are also deemed as muttaqi, parezgar, jalilul qadr. It is obvious that that time, meaning the days, nights, and months and years, is not something that can be described as ugly or beautiful. The day itself, that tomorrow is a beautiful day. Right? This is what we usually say, right? Or that was a golden age, right? We say that. The 90s were the best. The 80s were the best. Whatever, to each, everyone has their own ways of looking at things. Or even the place. You call places to be, that you have fondness to. Let's say you were born and raised in a certain place. He said, that is the best place to live. In your opinion, of course. Not in my opinion. I have different understanding of that. So therefore, this can be described as places or times and nights and days, is being described as ugly or beautiful, or hostile or ungrateful. Can you associate hostility to an era and ungratefulness to an era? Rather, it's the people of that time, of that era, who give such a color to their time. They're the ones who are shaping. When you say 90s were the best, you're talking about the people of that time were the best. When you said this is the best place to live, not because of the external beauty, otherwise I can produce 10 other places which are more beautiful. You say, well, my Faisalabad is the most beautiful place to live, right? Of course. Then I'll show you what's in Faisalabad. You tell me this is in Faisalabad, this is in. I'll show you 10 other places which are equally or better as far as beauty is concerned, right? True. So it's not the landscape that we're referring to. It's your association with that place and the people that lived in that time, in that place. The people are the best people. That's why you associate. So whenever goodness or badness of the time is mentioned, this is what is meant by it. Otherwise, neither the shining of the sun and the moon has changed. It's shining upon every place in the same way, except the Scandinavians maybe. Nor the rotation of the moon and around itself and around the sun. Those things haven't changed. It's all the same in every part of the world. So it is the people that make that place to be good. It's the era, the time that makes that place to be good or bad. So the sun shines, the rain falls, the earth offers its blessings to humanity wherever you go. It is the ugly and the disgraceful faces of the people of certain age and their evil deeds that make the face of the time appear ugly and shameful. So Imam lived in an era in which, except a small number of people, no one understood his great spirit. How many people stood by him? Handful of people. While this is Imam of the Ummah, this is the perfect human being, Insan Kamil, right? Who's there in continuation of Nubuwwat to lead people, who does not ask for anything for himself. Remember the story of Habib Najjar, فَعَزَّزْنَا بِثَالِثٍ, that 2 Anbiya were sent. Then the third one was sent. Habib Najjar came من أقصى المدينة قال يا قوم اتبعوا من لا يسألكم عليه أجرا. Follow the one who do not ask for any compensation. They're not here saying, I'm going to guide you, but you have to pay me. Like the scholars of the time, I'm here guiding you, I need to be compensated for that. The Anbiya didn't do that. In fact, Quran denies that. They didn't ask for anything. They were there as servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, serving mankind and humanity. Imamat is the continuation of that. So nobody understood except few his great spirit, lofty thoughts, noble human qualities that he possessed, or his ability to reform the society, that he had that capability. Today you find hundreds of scholars, amongst them maybe 1 or 2 have the ability to cause such a reform. So many scholars of the past, in the 1900s, only one was able to bring the revolution, for example. Well, the barakat of that, his name is always going to be in the books of history. Were there not other scholars that were highly educated than him? Imam Khomeini, there were many. His ustad was highly educated, right? There were many that lived prior to him who made their mark in fiqh, in usul and other areas. But his name shines over all of them because of the revolution that he was able to bring, the reform that he was able to cause. So, because of the enormous wealth that had poured into the Islamic lands from the conquests, so now you understand which era Imam is referring to, people became immersed in worldly glitter, competing in luxury and filled with greed and accumulating wealth, obtaining position, and settling personal and tribal scores. That's what was happening. So Imam says, we are living in difficult times. And with deep regret, many reformers throughout history have had similar complaints about the times in which they lived. So you'll read about the reformers of the past 10 decades or the past 10 centuries. They'll tell you the same exact thing, what they had to deal with in their time. There were people who were doing similar corruption. Then the Imam proceeds to describe the characteristics of that time, the signs of people's hostility and ingratitude, and he says, and he points to 5 matters. In the first and second statement, he says, يُعَدُّ فِيهِ الْمُحْسِنُ مُسِيًّا وَيَزْدَادُ الظَّالِمُ فِيهِ عُتُوًّا. What time are we living in? It is a time in which the doer of good is counted as evildoer. जो अच्छा करे उसको बुरा कहते हैं लोग. The one who's doing good is labeled as bad. And in which the oppressor increases in rebellion. Nothing is making the zalim stop. Rather, zalim is doing what? Increasing. لِيَزْدَادُ إِثْمًا. Quran highlights that, right? إِنَّمَا نُمْلِي عَلَيْهِمْ. Why do we give them respite? لِيَزْدَادُ. So that they may increase in their zulm. And of course, Allah will then grab them at the end. So is it really possible that in a certain era, the righteous would be accused of wrongdoing? Today even, look at it. And the oppressors encouraged and praised? The second part you can easily relate to. What's been happening in Gaza for the past 2.5 years? While the oppressor is known, International Court of Justice has called him to be, a criminal. Mayor of New York says he'll arrest him. If he goes to many of the countries, he'll be arrested. Yet, the oppressor is what? Is still encouraged, praised when he goes to the Senate. They all stand up, hail him, they praise him. And what's going on? The people that matter are praising him. The people that had the power to stop are praising him. Yes, what creates the conditions for such things in human society is the corruption and inversion of the value system. The value system is lopsided, upside down, where when wealth, riches, and power become the criteria for a person's worth and status, without any consideration of how that wealth was acquired. You became a millionaire through what? Through usurping, people's wealth, through black money, through corruption, through money laundering, through selling haram and doing business in haram. How you became? Nobody's going to question that. What they're going to look at is the maqam that you now have after all the dirty money that you accumulated. The oppressive tyrants and the plunderers become the notable figures of the society. And the doer of good, who spends his lawful wealth to serve the needy, is considered foolish and an ignorant person. What are you wasting your time with? Over here, really? Interestingly, the Quran, in brief yet profound statements, points to examples of corruption in certain human societies because of the corruption of their value system. So the prime story is the story of Hazrat Lut. One of the statements from the people of Lut was this. Regarding the people of Lut, Quran says, they would urge one another to expel that great prophet, Hazrat Lut, along with the few righteous believers around him from their city. That's what they initially wanted to do. We don't need Lut alayhi salatu wasalam in our society, and we don't need his followers in our society. Why? And they considered their only crime to be that these people were pure and chaste. They're too good. They're pure. They're pure souls. They're very righteous. They're good people. We don't want the good people in our society. Because good people then make us look bad. And they stop us from doing something bad. They stop us from our desires. So we don't want these good people in our society. Look at how the value system has changed. Instead of them becoming good, they want to remove the element of good altogether so that they are not facing any sharm haya. When I do something wrong, and Imam, my wrongful deed is exposed, now I have difficult time making eye contact with you, right? Sharm, haya. At least I have that much dhamir in me that I'm going to be presenting with. These people say, oh, this happens to us all the time. We don't want these people around. We don't want Nabi to be looking at us. We don't want these righteous people to be looking at us. Remove them. So their only crime was what? That they were pure, they were chaste. Quran says, فَمَا كَانَ جَوَابَ قَوْمِهِ إِلَّا أَنْ قَالُوا أَخْرِجُوا آلَ لُوطٍ مِنْ قَرْيَتِكُمْ إِنَّهُمْ أُنَاسٌ يَتَطَهَّرُونَ. That there are people who are pure and they're chaste. The oppressor from the people of Noah also considered the pure-hearted youths who believed in him to be what? Foolish. What are you believing in Noah? Old man building an ark in the middle of nowhere. You believe in him? That's foolishness. He's foolish, na'udhu billah. And you following him is also foolish. Low-class troublemakers who possess no virtue over others. They said, مَا نَرَاكَ إِلَّا بَشَرًا مِثْلَنَا وَمَا نَرَاكَ اتَّبَعَكَ الَّذِينَ هُمْ أَرَازِلُنَا. We see you as nothing but a human being like ourselves. This is what their comparison was. You know why so many of our Zakirin spend a lot of time talking about, no, they were not like us. Ahl-Bayt were not like us. Masumin were not like us. Anbiya were not like us. They spend so much time talking about that, which sometimes becomes overdue. Yes, we know that already. But this is the reason. Because ordinary people kept on saying, we don't see any difference between us and the Prophet. He's a human being like ourselves. And we see none following you except a group of our lowliest ones in simple and rash judgment. We do not see any superiority you have over us. Rather, we think you are liars. Kadhab, kadhabin, magicians, sahir, whatnot. Yes, when the people of the time become corrupt and oppression and corruption increases, the structure of society changes. And this is all too easy to see today in our societies as well. Anti-values replace true values, right? That which is considered to be, there are many good things. We do not condemn the part of the world that we live in. There are many very good qualities in the people that lived here. I don't know if I'm misquoting, but this is a statement associated to many people, but nonetheless there must be some truth behind it. A scholar from one of the places, from the Muslim countries, went to Europe for tabligh. After 2.5 months of tabligh, he went back home to his Muslim country. People asked him, explain, tell us, how was your experience? How was Europe? Where did you go? You went to this country, you went to this country. He said all that. And he said one thing, he said, I found that in Europe, there's Islam, but there are very few Muslims. But in our country, we have a lot of Muslims, but no Islam. That was very striking. So what does that mean? He said, in Europe you found Islam? He said, yeah, the Islamic values are practiced over there. There's honesty there. People, respect one another. There's righteousness over there. All those values that Islam wants in Islamic society are there, but there aren't Muslims. On the contrary, we got a lot of Muslims here, but the Islamic values are missing. Cheating, treachery, lying, all the slandering, all those things which are un-Islamic, all found here within our own Islamic country. So the anti-values replace the true values. The oppressor expands his tyranny. The doers of good are treated as criminals and pushed away from the sensitive centers of society. The result is exactly what Imam says in the third, the continuation of this passage. He says, لا ننتفع بما علمنا ولا نسأل أما جهلنا. He says what? He says, it has reached the point where we do not benefit from what we know and we do not ask about that we are ignorant of. So in reality, this is the worst condition into which a person, there are many ahadith of this sort you'll find from Masumin, that they say, one of the sifat, or one of the explanation of taqwa is also this. So when you go ahead and find the ta'rif of taqwa, what is the definition of taqwa? One of the definitions of taqwa is ta'amal bima alimta wa ta'alam ma jahilta. Act upon which you know and learn which you are ignorant of. That is taqwa. So one of the definitions of taqwa is act on what you know already. Do I not know it's haram? Yes, I do. Why am I still doing it? Do I not know lying is bad? Yes. Why am I still doing it? And if there's something that I'm ignorant of, what do I need to do? Learn it. That is the definition of taqwa in some ahadith. In reality, there's the worst condition into which a person or a society can fall, neither benefiting from the knowledge and awareness they possess to solve problems, nor seeking to remove their ignorance. We're good. And then there are those who become musallat upon us. They want to keep us in that state. They don't want us to learn anything, because if we learn something, we'll start questioning them. The result of these two failures is nothing but sinking deeper into ignorance and wrongdoing. And this is the state of all those who remain indifferent in the face of society's corruption. What can I do? When you see corruption, you remain silent. When you see goodness, you remain silent. You're indifferent. It doesn't matter to you. Whether due to despair and hopelessness about reform, or due to becoming accustomed, we become desensitized. That's fine. It's normal now. Bribery is actually considered to be part of the life now. Without bribery, I can't get anything done. So this is normal now. Then Imam adds, I think this is the last. For this very reason, we do not fear. We do not fear the striking calamities and destructive trials, except when they actually descend upon us. It is noteworthy over here that how Imam ﷺ changes from giving this as a khutbah, speaking to the people. Now, all of a sudden, Imam expresses these final statements using the first person plural. We, I, we, attributing them to himself, along with the whole community. So if I, as a speaker, if I stand and I'm giving Jummah khutbah, I say, we have as failed as a society, as opposed to saying, you have failed as a society. I say, well, you have excluded yourself. You're part of the society as well. Well, Imam has all the right in the world to exclude himself. He's Imam Masoom. I don't have that right to exclude myself. I'm part of the society, and I am also part of the corruption. But Imam can easily exclude himself. But look at the humbleness that Imam has. That he says, no, we collectively, we have, we do not fear the striking calamities and the destructive trials until they fall upon us. Attributing them to himself, along with the whole community, even though, without a doubt, a pure, aware, and God-fearing person like Imam ﷺ is completely free from such shortcomings. He does not belong in that category. This matter, or this manner of expression rather, may be in order to provoke their stubbornness, and so that they may feel included and recognize their own share in these matters. Lastly, the khutbah stops over here, or this first portion stops over here. But there's one point that I wanted to make over here. What does the corruption of time mean? We highlighted it in the beginning, saying it's not the time, the years, in 2001, 2002, 2003, 1998, 1999. No. For one of the sports teams, 96 to 2000 was the greatest time, because they won championships every single year. But for the past 20 years, they haven't won anything. So they will all reminisce of that time which was glory to them. As mentioned before, time in the sense of measurement of movement of the sun and the moon, or the rotation of the earth around itself and the sun, is not something that can be inherently righteous or corrupt. All times are in their essence alike. Why am I discussing this? Because we also have what? Days in the Jantri which are Saad and Nahas, good and bad. You find Jantri, especially when you're looking for, wedding date, nikah date for your children. You look for the days. Maulana, this date is Saad, this date is Nahas. This date is good, this day is bad. Well, what's the difference? They're all days upon which sun is shining. They're all the days upon which you say those are Saad and Nahas based on historical facts. Something may have had happen in that days. So for example, Nahas day would be when Shahadat took place. Nahas days would be when something bad happened on that day. Saad day would be when our criteria is Ahlul Bayt. So if the joy came to the house of Ahlul Bayt, it's good for us. If sadness came to their house. So all times in their essence are alike. Rather, it is possible that it is the people who give color to their times, and it is the virtuous events that make the period appear beautiful or ugly, and that make life within it sweet or bitter. Therefore, whenever it is said our time has become corrupt, it means that people of our time have become corrupt. This principle also applies to places. I was given an example earlier. When it is said that such and such city or country has become corrupt, right? It's leading, you go ahead and search on Google today, the leading corrupt countries that are most corrupted cities in the world, or the countries in the world. You get a list, whatever research that has been done. It is referring to that place. No, it's referring to the people of that place. It is the people of that place have made and caused that city to be leading in corruption. So many people misuse such expressions and take the corruption of the time and the corruption of the place. This is where the point is where I want your attention. Many people take the time and the space as an excuse for their own moral pollution. So if I'm living in that corrupted city, if I'm living in that corrupted land, in that country, when they are asked, why have such moral corruptions appeared in you and your family? They respond, what can I do? The times have become corrupt. Our city and our region has become corrupt. So that had, an effect on me, and therefore we are also like this. In reality, the corruption originates from themselves and from the people like them. Then this is beautifully explained and reflected in the poetry attributed to Hazrat Abdul Muttalib, father of Hazrat Abu Talib, grandfather of Rasulullah, who said, وَيُعِيبُ النَّاسُ كُلَّهُمْ زَمَانًا وَمَا لِزَمَانِنَا عَيْبٌ سِوَانَا. He said, all people criticize the time, while our time has no fault except us. There's nothing wrong with the time. It's us who have corrupted. نُعِيبُ زَمَانَنَا وَالْعَيْبُ فِينَا. We condemn the error, but the fault lies within us. وَلَوْ نَتَقَ الزَّمَانُ بِنَا حَجَانَا. And if the time could speak, it would mock us. So you blame me? I've done nothing. وَإِنَّ الذِّئْبَ يَتْرُكُ لَحْمَ ذِئْبَ. Even the wolf refrains from eating the flesh of another wolf. Right? A wolf will eat any other animal, but it will come across the flesh of another wolf, it will refrain from eating it. Shows you the characteristic of that vicious animal. وَيَأْكُلُ بَعْضُنَا بَعْضًا أَيَانًا. But we openly consume one another's flesh. So, we are worse than wolves. Wolves don't eat each other's flesh. But as humans, we go ahead and consume each other. So it is clear the corruption of an era is never removed unless the people of that era change. And divine grace will not descend. That's what Quran also says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُوا مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. Allah does not change the state of a people unless they change themselves. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين.